The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Cities, designed by Phil Walker Harding and Dr. Stephen Finn, and published by Devir. Doug, give us the stats.
All right, published in 2024. The art is by Jorge Tabanero Redondo. 2 to 4 players, about 30 to 40 minutes in a weird scenario. Board Game Geek users have not added an age to this game. The box says 10 plus. I think that 10 plus is probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I do too.
This is a weird one for us because by all indications, this should be a family game, but it does kind of lean a little bit into the light hobby game, depending on how well your teach and the experience of the players at the table can go. So I think it's right on the line, and I could be convinced in either direction.
Yeah, if you want to go from just a playing and having a good time, it's a family game. If you're getting into strategy, tactical thinking more than one turn ahead, I put it in the light hobby. It really does straddle a line for I think for both of us. We would say that, yeah.
So Cities is a city building game in which you draft the best projects and arrange them in your own playing area. With action and resource draft mechanisms, you'll score points building in Sydney, Venice, New York, Barcelona, Rio de Janeiro, Lisbon, Mexico City, and Buenos Aires. So those are kind of modifiers that change the scoring and some of the things that you're trying to achieve throughout the game. The game is played over 8 rounds, and in each round, and 4 rounds in a 2-player game, but in each round, players are going to use their workers. They have 4 workers, and throughout the round, you're going to be collecting 1 scoring card, 1 city tile, 1 or 2 feature tiles, and 2 to 4 building pieces. The order in which you get those is up to you as you're kind of doing a worker placement, putting it out and taking a set tile or card, that type of thing. City tiles are made up of park spaces, water spaces, and building spaces. So they are it's 4 quadrants on that each tile that you're going to be building and putting in your city. You can organize it and rotate it however you'd like. Building pieces are little plastic building pieces that go onto the building spaces of a tile of the same color. So if you have a building space that is blue, you can put blue buildings on top of it, and those buildings can be 1 to 4 stories high. So you can stack them on top of each other as the game goes along. Whenever a player fulfills an achievement, there are 3 achievements for every city. You are going to put one of your achievement discs on the board. So if you do or complete that achievement first, you're going to get a higher score than somebody that maybe completes it later on in the game.
Quick example.
Yeah.
Like in New York, a park area of at least 7 spaces. If you complete that, boom, you put your chip down, it's 5 points. Second place is 3, third place is 1. Just wanted to give a quick example.
Yep, and then you can also get feature tiles. These are going to be, there are tiles that go into park spaces. There are tiles that go into water spaces, so maybe boats and a lighthouse. The park spaces has vendor stalls and a Ferris wheel, I think, or a carousel that you put down, and they're kind of a multiplier. If you can get more of those in a single park, more points you're going to score. There are also statues, which are just straight two victory points. And then there's kind of a wild building tile that you can place on another tile, another building space, to change the color of that tile. So maybe it's a yellow building space. You can put this on there, and now you could put a blue building on there. You're also going to be acquiring scoring cards, 1 per round, and these are going to give you various objectives throughout the game. For example, you're going to get 6 points for every green building that's 4 stories tall, or 2 points for every building that's 2 spaces tall, or two stories tall, no matter what color. Those type of things. At the end of the game, players are going to add up the points they've gained from all of their scoring cards and their achievements, and whoever has the highest score wins the game. So that's the basic overview. I think what is really interesting to me about this game is in the same ways that when the Beatles broke up and John Lennon and Paul McCartney went in different directions, I can see what they both contributed to the Beatles. I can see both designers' influences on this game. You know what I'm saying?
You better take that one. Yeah, I do, but you better keep going with your analogy here.
Well, there are just
you are a resident Beatles expert. I love both these designers, so I'm on this train with you here. Where are you driving us to?
Just that you can see parts. While I'm playing this, I can say, "Oh, yeah, that's very Phil Walker Harding." Whether it's the chasing of the goals, and there's some of the
tile placement.
Yeah, and so seeing those different elements come together, I can see how these designers work together well and how they made this game, and they complement each other really well. There's elements of Biblios and Herbaceous and those type of feelings that I get from Steve Finn and Squiggly Gum and planted mechanisms from Phil Walker Harding. They just is a really good combination of the two of them.
No, absolutely. I in terms of a collaborative game where you can see the thumbprint of each designer, this one has both designers present. And also a lot of different options, right? By changing the actual cities. And were you done with the description? Am I able to jump in here?
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
By changing the actual cities, it really changes the gameplay experience. And the rules, it suggests, hey, for your first game, why don't you try New York or Rio de Janeiro? So if you're playing Rio de Janeiro, you're going to get rewarded based on structures that are built around water. New York is going to be, getting you to, you're going to get bonuses for parks, and then also there's a skyscraper bonus. So it's a great way of scaffolding. Here's how you learn to play with the parks, with the water. Then you get into some of the advanced ones like Lisbon, and I have to look and be like, okay, 3 areas of any shape, each made up of 3 building spaces of the same color with or without buildings. And it has a little diagram. They're like, okay, that is much more advanced than what I was just looking at with my 8-year-old when we were going to play the New York version. So I like that there's that, that you have that ability to really adapt the gameplay within those reward areas, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and that's one of those things that on the New York side, you're getting closer to that family level. You go Lisbon, you're getting more towards that light hobby. This is a good combination of a bunch of games and mechanisms that I enjoy, which is, I think, why it works well for a lot of different people. It has that drafting and selection, the race to different scoring objectives. There's tile placement. And manipulating that in a way, and then with the scoring cards, those multipliers that you can rack up points a lot, and so there's those different elements that create this whole. And I think it's interesting because based on, you're only going to take one of those 4 things every round. You're only going to take one scoring card, one city tile, the feature tiles, and then some building pieces. And it's interesting because you have to look around the table. You have to evaluate, what do I want? What's the best for me? But then not necessarily in a hate draft way. It's, for me anyway, when I'm playing this game, I don't look around as a hate draft thing. I look around at what is Michael most likely about to take. And then if I want that, do I need to take it before him? Which is that risk management of, how long can I wait? And out of the 4 options, which is the most important to me now? Because sometimes it may be a scoring card that works with another scoring card that you already have.
Right.
That you may take that first. And other times it's like, I need to get these building tiles built. And so I like that about the game, that it's not, oh, well, Michael needs this, so I'm just going to take it. No, it's usually for me, I need this. Do I need to take it before Michael?
Well, and what I noticed in repeated plays is that the objectives, the easier ones are on the left side, and they're only going to give you 5 points, right? But when I read left to right, and the harder ones are going to be over on the right, and they have typically 7 points.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying about observing the table and when do I make a decision, what I really enjoy, and this is mostly playing with adults, all right, not playing with my kiddos, but when do I move off of a goal and abandon the goal that I was going towards, that was very clear to everyone at the table that I was going, to try to get a park area of 4+ spaces, and shift to a different goal because I have an advantage, right? Because all of a sudden I get to go first and there are 3 red buildings out there, and that means I'm going to be the first one to get the 4th red building and get 7 points. And so I like how the observation and the tactical thinking and the decision-making play out in real time. We have not had an issue with analysis paralysis. I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping the game moving, but I can see how the game would slow down if you're playing with a mathematician. Like if Uncle Reiner came over. No, you don't think so?
I don't think so, because I think the options are limited enough.
Okay.
That
we haven't run into it, but I'm just trying to think of what some possible issues could be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could happen, but I feel like when you have, once I take my scoring card, I don't have to look at that section anymore. It's irrelevant to me. So now I'm down to 3 options, and so the fact that it narrows down essentially that last turn, depending on the player count, is pretty much, well, I'm going to be getting that, I'm going to be getting that, and in a 3-player game, if 2 people take the building pieces first, then it's like, well, I don't need to go after that because those are still available those are going to be available at the end. So what can I jump into now? So I think the game does a really good job of kind of avoiding that that analysis paralysis type of thing. I think it's eliminated with the game design, actually.
And I want to just say more about that, because a lot of drafting games can lead to slowing down, and we've talked about that. Especially in the middle or towards the end, it can really slow down. And this one has always just been moving. Well, you think it's because of the 4 different tracks, and you're limited to one of those 4 tracks, so your decision, as the round goes on, your decision is actually made easier for you?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I think, one, that the funnel shrinks, so your decisions towards the end of each round is easier. They get easier, as opposed to some games where that's the reverse, where it's like, okay, do this, do this. The other thing is, because the scoring is not associated with individual actions. For example, those scoring cards, you're not scoring them right away. I think that goes a long way as far as not slowing up the game, because there's not enough information to do a whole bunch of calculations. It's like, I can take this building tile, but I don't know what other building tiles are coming out next round. So I don't need to worry about, you're basically always picking what's best for me right now. And when that's the case, I think that's what prevents the AP, because you don't have to overly plan.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the other thing, too, that I really enjoy about this game is I've had multiple plays where I feel like I'm just one turn away from doing just something incredible and getting all my scoring cards to synergize. But the scoring cards and what you choose when you draft the scoring cards is really important to your end game score. And that might not be obvious in an initial play, especially if you're playing with kids. But when you go through and you start to calculate that, okay, I've got the same scoring card 3 times. So instead of 2 points for 2 green buildings, I'm getting 6 points for each of those 2 green buildings.
Yeah.
And when you see how those cards synergize, and I might be off there, maybe there's only 2 of the scoring cards for the green buildings in there. All right, I hear you. But as you get those scoring cards to combo together, your score can really add up, or you can have some misses. I had a game that we just played very recently where I had 3 scoring cards, I didn't actually score
Yeah.
because I chose to move one building up to 4 instead of keeping it at 3. So it's one in the opening segment you talked about, memory games kind of being a thing that can bring you down. I think for me, sometimes I can forget about all the different scoring options. I'll get too focused on one thing, and then I'm actually hurting myself. But it's in a fun way.
Well, and the scoring cards and the way that the game is designed, I think, is what keeps you. For example, you take a scoring card in the first round, and it is leaning you in one direction. Well, then the scoring cards that come out in the next round are either completely opposite or different, and so you can't do everything. You can't score every scoring card. I might have a thing that says, score 2 points for every 2-story blue building, and then the next one comes out and it says, and I get stuck with, because there was other stuff that was more important because I was going after my 2-story blue buildings, and I get stuck with a scoring card that says, you get points for every 4-story blue buildings, and now you were sitting like, okay, what do? Do I go after 4 or 2-story buildings? And
then it's your turn again.
Yeah, and there's somewhere it's like, oh, you get points if you have a big park. But this one, and so the objective for, if you're in New York, the main objective for the game is build a big park area like Central Park. And then you get a scoring card that says, have a whole bunch of tiny parks spread throughout your city. And you're like, I don't know.
What do I do now?
And so I think because those things are kind of always playing off of each other, that it's really hard to focus in and do a strategic thinking, and it very much becomes tactical thinking as the game goes along.
I agree with that. And what I'm saying is I think this is a game that is set up for repeated plays in a household.
Yeah.
Very much in the line of a Biblios or a Sushi Go, right? If you have or a Barren Park, if those are games that you have in your family's house and you enjoy, where I think Cities fits in is that in a 10-game stretch, you're going to have 1 or 2 games where everything just works and it's awesome, and somehow you find out that you scored a lot more points than in 6 or 7 of the other games out of a 10 set. And maybe in one game you absolutely don't score many points. And I like that variability.
Yeah.
That if I play 10 games, I'm not always going to be between 34 and 36 points.
Yeah.
Right? I might have a game where I hit a 72 and I get an 18. What'd you have, like 83? You had something ridiculous in the last game we played.
Yeah, everything fell in.
And I like that. We talked about Biblios back in episode 92 as a game of the week. I believe this is Phil Walker Harding's 8th or 9th game of the week. I actually lost count earlier today, so we're at about a 5% rate on the games of the week being from either Dr. Stephen Finn or Phil Walker Harding, and this is another game where it just fits really well for my house, and it's one that I think I could take out to the community and get it up and running and played, because it has some basic mechanics of place this, take that, place what you just took.
Yeah.
And however you explain it, once people see it, and it's like, no, you can manipulate that tile. You can move it around. You can play it. You're going to have a little 3x3 grid at the end of the game, and it's game over. We haven't played it in the school setting yet because it came out over the summer, but I do think this can fit in an after school setting. If you have an hour, I think you can get through a full game, no problem with a group of kiddos.
Yeah. I think what I like about it is that it seems to me to provide the perfect amount of luck and control. And sometimes games lean more in one direction than the other, where you play a game and at the end of it you're like, I really wasn't making any decisions. I felt like the game was playing me. And then there are other games where it feels like, gosh, there are too many decisions here, and I don't want to spend the brain power to kind of do all of these things. Or you get to the end and it's like, well, clearly the other people at the table are better players than me. I'm never going to win. And this one does a good job where I think there's a good amount of luck in this game based on what tiles come out, what order you get them in, but I still feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing.
That's a good point.
Which is really unique in a game. Like I said, usually maybe it's slightly tilted more towards luck, maybe it's slightly tilted more towards the strategy type of thing. This one lands right in the middle, which I think is good. The only thing I didn't really care for, to be completely honest, was I was not a fan of the 2-player experience.
Yeah, you didn't care for that. Go ahead. Say more about it.
Basically, in the main setup, instead of playing 4 or 8 rounds, you're playing 4 rounds, but you're placing 8 workers out a round. So you're getting
Instead of 4.
2 of every one of those items. You're getting 2 scoring cards. And
then for the rewards, there's the high and the low. The middle reward is completely taken out.
And so I just felt like the first couple turns of a round were good and felt like the regular game. But once you got into those 4 through 8, it was seemed kind of apparent where the other person was going to be going. And it really got to a point at the end of each round where you're like, well, you have to go there, I have to go here. And it's like, I'll be taking this objective card, you'll be taking those building tiles. And it became more of like a bookkeeping type thing of like passing everything out, as opposed to those last decisions are completely meaningless because there's only one space for my, 2 spaces for my last 2 guys to go because I can't get 3 objective cards or whatever it is. So it kind of felt like I was wanting more, and it just felt like we were playing out the hand.
Yeah, and I want to honor your critique, so I'm not trying to critique your critique, okay? Because I can't stand when people do that to me, but I'll say, 1, it's not called rewards. It is the City Achievement Board. We are doing a review. I should have the proper title.
There you go.
So on the City Achievement Board, there's a high, middle, and a low, typically like a 5, 3, and a 1. And a 2-player, that middle on the City Achievement is gone. It's not there. The one thing I'll say, though, what I wondered about our 2-player experience, because I've had this happen a few different times where it's like, I think I just need to play that with somebody who's not the co-host of the Game Schooler podcast, because we play games so often. We've got thousands of game sessions in now. So I'm not saying that I ruined that 2-player experience for you, but I could have.
No, I disagree with that 100% because we've played games where it's like, all right, Michael's getting a little bit more heated in this and competitive than I am. I mean, that's a real thing.
That's a thing.
This is Michael's playing for keeps. I'm not ready for that commitment yet. This was a game that I felt like it was the actual gameplay of it, and it literally had nothing to do with what you were taking or what you were doing. It just felt like this weird cleanup at the end of the round that three or four out of the 8 people that I was placing seemed uninteresting to me.
Yeah.
As opposed to when I'm only placing, getting 1 tile, 1 scoring card around, that seemed more impactful. And in the 2-player thing, those last 4 in a round seemed kind of arbitrary to me and not.
And when you pointed it out, I couldn't poke holes in what you were saying. I mean, essentially, I was like, "Yep, nope, I'll go through the cleanup with you now at the end." But you enjoyed it at 3 players, correct?
Yeah, at 3, and then I think the 4th player, really ramps up a little bit of the competitiveness of where if you're looking for casual, sticking with the 3. If you're looking for a little bit more of that tension. Then I think 4 is awesome, and it still straddles that line of luck and control that I really enjoy.
And the one thing I want to say that I really like, they have this chunky wooden star in it, a gold star, and you can choose to grab the gold star and then get 2 of the building tiles at random out of the bag. But that gold star makes you the first player, and in a 3 or 4 player game, I think that can be a nice, more than a nice, it's a huge advantage. Especially as the game is wearing on. Because in the 3-player, then, if nobody picks the gold star, it's the person who places their character closest to the gold star. Because you actually get fewer of the building pieces when you're closer to the gold star. So I enjoyed that little game within the game. I did enjoy that. So, whether I'm playing at 2, 3, or 4, it's a decision that a controlled decision that I really do like taking.
Yeah, I mean, I think this works well as a family game night. I think it works great as a game night for gamers. The after school thing remains to be seen. However, there are still some great skills in this game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
One of the ones that we've talked about, almost all of these that are on my list: tactical thinking, making decisions based on currently available and frequently changing information. The board state is changing, but that doesn't mean that there's now more options. It means that your options are now reduced. And so picking out what's best for you is important. I love the competition in this game because it's not cutthroat, stab you in the back. It's that tactical maneuvering type of competition. How can I get that before Michael gets it? I'm going to let Michael chase that one because I know he wants it, because this one's more valuable to me. I love that type of competition.
Yeah, 13 points is greater than 5. So I'm going to let him get that 5-pointer, and I'm going to go take the 13 over here from these two. Yeah.
And then, of course, the spatial perception of trying to line up the tiles how you need them to, stack the buildings how you want them, and figuring out where things will fit, whether that's building pieces or those enhancement tiles of adding to the parks and water. So some great skills there. Anything that you've got that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I said it at the front end of the segment, but I'll say it again. I love that in the base box, there are 8 different cities, and each city has 3 very different objectives. So in a very small, compact box. So I'm not having to get out a playmat. I'm not having to get a whole new deck of cards. I'm not having to, things that I'll do in other parts of the hobby. I just flip a different cardboard tile in there. And there's some details, too, that I didn't pick up on in the initial play that in repeated plays. It's got the cell phone coverage with the bars up in the corner of each city. And so I really do enjoy the art. Before I get into the skills here, this artist was new to me, and he's also a designer, Jorge Tabanera Redondo, and so I enjoyed all those aspects of the game, from just a pure game school or podcast skills that you haven't covered or I haven't covered. The only other one, did you mention risk management?
No. Nope.
All right. We define risk management as a game in which players must identify, evaluate, and prioritize options to reduce the impact of unfortunate events or risks. The drafting happens so quickly. I like that early round, thinking of, well, what do I think will be here the next time it goes around, and then that prioritizing what must I take right now. I think this game does a really good job of bouncing risk management right into the drafting, and then just, it's not a game school or specific skill, but it is a school, and if you're playing games in the community skill, this game sets up and takes down quickly. And so I appreciate that when you're playing a game with kids and other people's kids, a game that does that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I would highlight.
Anything else for you on this one?
No, just that this was a review copy, and we don't always call that out, but getting it ahead of the time before the street date really allowed us to get repeated plays in. So appreciate that. Off-Duty Desk Ninja, thank you for sending that our way. And this is, if you like what you've heard, check it out.
Yep, so that is our game of the week. Give it a try if you get the chance. That is Cities, published by Devir, designers Steve Finn and Phil Walker Harding.
Dr. Steve Finn? Better put some respect on his name.
Dr. Steve Finn and Phil Walker Harding.